The emergency council meeting had been called at midnight, and Rex could feel the tension in the air as soon as he walked into the chamber. The Galactic Council's most trusted captains sat around the curved table, their faces grim in the blue light of the holographic displays. Rex had served the council for 15 years, but he had never seen the council members look so worried. "Gentlemen, we have a problem," announced Council Leader Thane, his voice heavy with concern. The massive screen behind him flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. A large red zone pulsed ominously near the outer rim. "This is the Sol System, home to the species called humans. For the past 22 years, this region has been completely off-limits to all galactic traffic." Rex leaned forward in his chair. He had heard whispers about the human territory, but nothing official. The rumors spoke of ships that vanished, without a trace, and crews who returned speaking nonsense about shadows and voices. "The problem is getting worse," continued Thane. "Last week, we lost contact with the exploration vessel Dawnrunner. 3 days ago, the cargo ship Starwind disappeared while trying to reach the mining stations near the boundary. But yesterday, something happened that changed everything. The holographic display shifted, showing a battered spacecraft limping through space. Rex recognized it immediately, the diplomatic cruiser Harmony, one of the Council's most advanced vessels. "The Harmony returned this morning with only half its crew alive," Thane said quietly. "The survivors are currently in the medical bay, and what they told us has shaken the entire Council. Captain Rex, we need you to lead a special investigation. Team into human space and discover what makes this region so dangerous." Rex felt a chill run down his spine. "Sir, with respect, every ship that has tried to enter human territory has either disappeared or returned with crews driven mad. What makes you think my team will be any different?" "Because you're not going as diplomats or traders," replied Thane. "You're going as scientists. Your team will include the best minds we have, Communications Officer Nora, Weapons Specialist Tom, and our top xenobiologist Dr. Vale. If anyone can solve this mystery, it's your team." The screen changed again, showing footage from the Harmony security cameras. Rex watched in horror as crew members suddenly began screaming and clawing at their own faces. Others stared blankly at empty spaces, talking to things that weren't there. The timestamp showed the footage was recorded just as the ship crossed into human territory. "What exactly did the survivors say?" Rex asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Thane's expression darkened. "They spoke of watchers in the dark, of voices that whispered directly into their minds. Some described seeing impossible shapes that hurt to look at. Others said they felt like something was trying to crawl inside their thoughts. The ship's psychic officers suffered the worst effects. 2 of them are still in catatonic states." Rex studied the map again. The red zone seemed to pulse with an almost living rhythm. "How large is this Forbiddance area?" "It extends roughly 50 light-years in all directions from the Sol System," answered Dr. Lin, the Council's chief scientist. "But the effects seem to get stronger the closer you get to the human homeworld. We've detected massive energy signatures. That shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. Long-range sensors show distortions in space-time itself." "What do we know about the humans themselves?" Rex asked. "Are they hostile? Are they using some kind of weapon against our ships?" "That's the strangest part," said Thane. "When we first made contact with them 25 years ago, they seemed genuinely peaceful. They welcomed our diplomatic mission with open arms and appeared eager to join galactic civilization. Then something went wrong during the cultural exchange ceremonies. Our telepathic delegates started experiencing severe psychological distress. Within hours, the entire mission had to be evacuated. Rex tried to process this information. "So the humans aren't actively attacking our ships?" "We don't believe so," replied Dr. Lin. "The evidence suggests that whatever is affecting our vessels is a passive effect, something that exists naturally in human space. But we need to know what it is and why it's getting stronger." The meeting continued for another hour as Rex received detailed briefings about the failed missions and the strange phenomena reported by survivors. The more he learned, the more disturbed he became. Ships would enter human territory and immediately experience electronic failures. Navigation systems would show impossible readings. Crew members would report seeing things that weren't there. "When do we leave?" Rex finally asked. "Tomorrow at dawn," said Thane. "Your ship, the Starfall, has been specially modified with the latest shielding technology. We've also installed experimental psychic dampeners that might protect your crew from whatever is affecting the other ships." Rex stood up, feeling the weight of the mission settling on his shoulders. "Sir, what if we don't return? What if we end up like the other crews?" Thane looked directly into Rex's eyes. "Then we'll have to consider the possibility that humanity represents a threat to the entire galaxy. The Council has already begun discussing more drastic measures." Rex felt a chill at those words. He knew what drastic measures meant in Council. "Speak. You're talking about a military response." "If necessary," Thane replied grimly. "We cannot allow an entire region of space to remain hostile to galactic civilization. If the humans are responsible for these effects, either intentionally or unintentionally, then we may have no choice but to take action." As Rex left the council chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more dangerous than a simple investigation. The stories from the survivors haunted him, tales of shadows that moved independently of their sources, of voices that spoke in languages that predated civilization, of a darkness that seemed to seep into the very fabric of space itself. The next morning, Rex stood in the docking bay watching his crew prepare the Starfall for launch. Nora was running final checks on the communication systems, her experienced hands moving quickly over the control panels. Tom was inspecting the ship's weapons, though Rex doubted conventional arms would be of much use against whatever they were. About to face, Dr. Vale was reviewing the scientific data from previous missions, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain," called Nora from her station, "all systems are ready. We can depart whenever you give the order." Rex took a deep breath and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the darkness of space, lay the answers to the mystery that had puzzled the galaxy for over 2 decades. Whatever was waiting for them in human territory, Rex was determined to find the truth, even if it killed him. Ambassador Kai had never seen anything quite like the blue and green planet that hung in the viewport of his ship. Earth looked peaceful from space, its white clouds swirling over vast oceans and brown continents. After 6 months of travel from the Centauri Republic, the diplomatic vessel Phoenix was finally approaching humanity's homeworld for the first official contact between their species. The date was March 15th, 2157, and Kai felt optimistic about the mission. The humans had responded positively to their long-range communications, and everything suggested they were a peaceful species eager to learn about the galaxy beyond their solar system. President Mills had personally invited the delegation to visit Earth, and the human media was calling it the most important day in their history. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the surface," reported Communications Officer Dex from his station. "President Mills is confirming that the landing ceremony will take place at the United Nations headquarters in New York. They've prepared a full cultural exchange program for our visit." Kai nodded, adjusting his formal diplomatic robes. "Excellent. How are our telepathic advisors doing? I want to make sure we can properly understand human emotions and intentions during the negotiations." "They're ready, sir," replied Dr. Alan, the mission's chief xenobiologist. "Though I must say the human minds seem unusually difficult to read. There's a lot of mental static that our telepaths are having trouble filtering through." "That's not uncommon with newly contacted species," Kai said. "Many civilizations have natural psychic defenses. I'm sure our team will adapt quickly." The Phoenix landed at the designated coordinates, and Kai's first impression of humans was overwhelmingly positive. President Mills was a tall, dignified woman with graying hair and kind eyes. General Stone, her military advisor, maintained a respectful distance while still projecting an aura of protective strength. The crowd of human reporters and dignitaries seemed genuinely excited and welcoming. "Ambassador Kai," President Mills said warmly, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Welcome to Earth. This is truly a historic day for our species. Kai accepted the handshake, noting that human skin felt surprisingly warm. Thank you, President Mills. The Centauri Republic is honored to establish relations with humanity. We look forward to sharing knowledge and friendship between our peoples. The first few hours of the visit went perfectly. The humans gave presentations about their art, science, and culture. They showed the delegation through museums, introduced them to human music, and shared meals prepared with ingredients from across their planet. Kai was impressed by human creativity and their remarkable ability to work together despite their physical and cultural differences. Your species shows great promise, Kai told President Mills during a private moment. The Galactic Council will be very interested in welcoming humanity as a member civilization. We're eager to learn from more advanced species, Mills replied. Our scientists have so many questions about faster-than-light travel, energy production, and interstellar communication. This partnership could advance human civilization by thousands of years. But as the day progressed, Kai began to notice something disturbing. His telepathic advisors were becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Dr. Olan pulled him aside during the evening reception, his face pale with worry. "Sir, we need to talk privately," Olan whispered urgently. "Something is very wrong here." They stepped into a quiet corner of the reception hall, away from the humans and other delegation members. "What's the problem?" Kai asked. "The telepathic team is experiencing severe distress," Olan explained. "At first, we thought it was just the normal difficulty of reading an unfamiliar species, but it's getting worse. They're reporting that human minds are generating some kind of psychic interference that's extremely painful to encounter." Kai frowned. "What kind of interference?" "They describe it as screaming darkness, sir. Not audible screaming, but something that attacks the mind directly. And there's something else. They're seeing things that aren't there. Shadows that move independently, shapes that hurt to look at directly." Before Kai could respond, a commotion erupted from the main reception area. They rushed back to find one of the delegation's telepathic officers, Commander Yu, standing in the middle of the room with her hands pressed against her temples, her eyes wide with terror. "Can't you hear them?" Yu was shouting at the confused humans. "They're everywhere. In the walls, in the shadows, in the spaces between thoughts. How can you not hear them screaming?" President Mills approached cautiously. "Commander, there's no one else here. What are you hearing?" "They're trying to get in," Yu continued, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "They've been trying for so long, but you won't let them. You're fighting them, but you don't even know you're fighting them." General Stone stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "Ambassador, is your officer experiencing some kind of medical emergency?" Before Kai could answer, two more telepathic officers began experiencing similar breakdowns. They fell to their knees, clutching their heads and speaking in fragmented sentences about watchers in the dark and voices that whispered in languages that predated civilization. "We need to get them back to the ship immediately," Kai told President Mills. "I'm sorry, but we'll have to cut this visit short." "Of course," Mills replied, though her expression showed deep concern. "Is there anything we can do to help?" "No, thank you," Kai said quickly. "This appears to be a compatibility issue between our species. We'll need to study this phenomenon before we can continue diplomatic relations." As they rushed the affected officers back to the Phoenix, Dr. Olan made a discovery that chilled Kai to the bone. Hidden in the classified files he had been allowed to access during the cultural exchange, Olan found references to human research programs that studied something called psychic defense systems and interdimensional barrier maintenance. "Sir, I think I understand what's happening," Olan said as they prepared for emergency departure. "The humans aren't just naturally resistant to psychic influence. They're actively generating something that drives telepathic species to madness." "What do you mean?" Kai asked. "According to these files, human brains exist in a constant state of what they call defensive warfare against entities they can't properly describe. Every human mind is apparently fighting off some kind of invasion from what they refer to as The spaces between spaces, Kai felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying that humans are under attack by some kind of hostile force? More than that, Olan replied grimly. I think they've been under attack for so long that their minds have evolved to create a psychic field that repels these entities. But that same field is what's driving our telepathic officers insane. As the Phoenix lifted off from Earth, Kai watched the beautiful blue planet shrink away below them. The humans had seemed so normal, so peaceful and welcoming. But now he realized that beneath their friendly exterior lay something far more complex and potentially dangerous. Sir, reported the ship's medical officer, Commander Yu is in a catatonic state. The other affected officers are experiencing severe psychological trauma. They keep repeating phrases about the Watchers and the spaces between thoughts. Kai made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life? Send an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity represents a potential threat to all telepathic species. Recommend that human space be declared off-limits until we can understand what we're dealing with. What about the humans themselves? Asked Dr. Olan. They seemed genuinely unaware of the effect they were having on us. Kai stared out at the stars, trying to process what he had witnessed. I don't think they know what they are. I don't think they know what they're becoming. And that might be the most terrifying thing of all. The Starfall had been traveling toward human space for 3 days when the first anomaly appeared. Tom was running his usual weapons diagnostics when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The targeting computers were showing enemy contacts that didn't exist on any other sensor system. Captain, Tom called out, his voice tight with concern. I'm reading multiple hostile signatures on the weapons display, but navigation shows empty space. The contacts keep appearing and disappearing like they're phasing in and out of reality. Rex moved to Tom's station and studied the readouts. According to the targeting system, they were surrounded by dozens of massive objects, each one larger than their ship. But every other sensor showed nothing but the usual background radiation of deep space. Dr. Vale, are you picking up anything unusual? On the scientific instruments? Rex asked. Dr. Vale looked up from her research station, her face pale. Captain, I've been monitoring some very disturbing readings. The closer we get to human territory, the more unstable our instruments become. It's as if reality itself is becoming unreliable. Nora turned from her communications console. Sir, I'm receiving transmissions that shouldn't exist. Radio signals from Earth, but they're coming from the wrong direction. Some of them appear to be from the past. I'm picking up broadcasts from decades ago mixed in with current communications. Rex felt a growing sense of unease. They were still 2 days away from the boundary of human space, but already their ship was experiencing phenomena that defied explanation. How are the crew holding up? That's another problem, Dr. Vale replied grimly. I've been monitoring the psychological state of everyone on board. Sleep patterns are becoming erratic. Several crew members have reported nightmares about things they can't describe. And there's something else. I think our thought patterns are being affected. What do you mean? Rex asked. I've been keeping a detailed log of my own mental state, Dr. Vale explained. Over the past day, I've noticed that my thinking is becoming more dogmented. It's hard to explain. But sometimes I catch myself having thoughts that don't seem to be my own. Brief flashes of concepts and images that feel foreign to my mind. Tom suddenly stood up from his station, his hand moving to his sidearm. Did you hear that? He asked, his eyes scanning the bridge. Hear what? Rex replied. Someone was whispering. My name, Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. It came from right behind me, but there's no one there. Rex felt a chill run down his spine. Tom, there's no one on the bridge except the 4 of us. I know that, Tom replied, but his hand remained on his weapon. But I heard it clear as day, a voice I didn't recognize, speaking in a language I don't understand, but somehow I knew it was saying my name. Dr. Vale quickly moved to her medical scanners. Captain, I'm detecting unusual brain activity in Tom's neural patterns. There's a lot of activity in areas associated with auditory processing, but also in regions that normally handle language interpretation and threat assessment. I'm fine, Tom insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. It was probably just fatigue. We've been traveling for days without proper rest. Over the next several hours, the situation continued to deteriorate. The ship's navigation system began showing impossible readings, suggesting they were somehow traveling through folded space-time. The environmental controls fluctuated wildly, creating pockets of extreme cold and heat throughout the ship. Most disturbing of all, crew members began reporting encounters with things that couldn't be there. "Captain," Nora said during the night shift, "I need to report something." I was alone in the communications bay when I saw someone standing in the corner, a figure in a uniform I didn't recognize. When I turned to look directly at it, there was nothing there, but I could still sense its presence. Rex was beginning to understand why so many ships had been lost or returned with crews driven mad. Whatever was happening to them seemed to be getting worse the closer they got to human space. "Dr. Vale, what's your professional opinion about what we're experiencing?" "I believe we're encountering some kind of psychic phenomenon," she replied. "The evidence suggests that human space is permeated with energy that affects conscious minds in ways we don't understand. The humans themselves must have some kind of natural resistance to these effects. Or they've adapted to them," Rex said grimly. "The question is, what's generating this energy?" The answer came sooner than expected. As they approached the outer boundary of human territory, the ship's long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. Hidden within the asteroid field surrounding the Sol system were massive installations that didn't match any known human technology. "Captain," Nora reported, "I'm intercepting human communications from those installations. They're not talking about defending against alien invasion. They're talking about something called barrier maintenance and psychic containment protocols." Rex studied the sensor readings. The installations were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. They seemed to be generating the same type of energy that was affecting his ship. "Are you saying the humans built these things?" "I don't think so," Dr. Vale said after studying the data. "The construction materials and energy signatures don't match human technology. But the humans are definitely operating them." Tom, who had been growing increasingly agitated over the past few hours, suddenly spoke up. "They're not trying to keep us out. They're trying to keep something else in." "What do you mean?" Rex asked. "I can hear them," Tom said, his voice taking on a distant quality. "The things that whisper in the dark. They're not coming from human space. They're coming from somewhere else entirely. The humans are fighting them, have been fighting them, for a very long time." Dr. Vale quickly scanned Tom's brain patterns again. "Captain, his neural activity is off the charts. He's experiencing some kind of psychic contact with an external source." "The barriers are weakening," Tom continued, his eyes unfocused. "Every time one of our ships enters human space, it creates tiny cracks in the containment field. The things from the other side try to use our minds as doorways to escape." Rex felt a growing horror as he began to understand the implications. "Tom, are you saying that humanity is fighting some kind of war?" "Not a war," Tom replied, his voice now barely recognizable. "A siege. They're under siege from entities that exist in the spaces between reality. Every human mind is a fortress, and they've been holding the line for centuries." The ship's alarms suddenly began blaring as the hull registered massive impacts from sources that didn't exist. Through the viewports, the crew could see space itself seeming to ripple and bend. In the distance, the installations around the Sol system pulsed with brilliant light, as if responding to some kind of attack. "Captain," Nora said, her voice shaking, "I'm receiving a transmission from one of the human installations. They're trying to warn us about something." The transmission crackled with static, but a human voice came through clearly. "Unknown vessel, you need to leave this area immediately. Your presence is destabilizing the containment field. We're detecting massive psychic intrusions attempting to use your crew as anchor points." Rex realized with growing horror that they had stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple territorial dispute. The humans weren't trying to keep aliens out of their space, they were trying to protect the entire galaxy from something that existed beyond the boundaries of normal reality. Set course for the nearest human installation, Rex ordered. We need to make contact with them directly. If we're going to understand what's happening here, we need to hear their side of the story. As the Starfall changed course toward the human station, the psychic disturbances intensified. Crew members began experiencing visions of impossible geometries and hearing voices that spoke in languages that hurt to think about. But through it all, Tom's words echoed in Rex's mind. The humans were fighting a war that the rest of the galaxy didn't even know existed. The human research station looked like nothing Rex had ever seen before. Instead of the sleek, curved designs favored by most galactic civilizations, the structure was angular and harsh, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and move when viewed directly. Even more disturbing, the station appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Parts of it seemed to phase in and out of reality. "This is Dr. Beth calling the approaching vessel," came a calm human voice over the communications system. "I'm the station commander. I understand you're having some difficulties with psychic intrusions. Please dock at Bay 7. It's the most heavily shielded area we have." As the Starfall approached the docking bay, Rex noticed that the space around the station was filled with what looked cracks in reality itself. Through these rifts, he could see glimpses of other places, dark voids filled with moving shadows and landscapes that defied description. "Captain," Dr. Vale said, studying her instruments, "the energy readings from this station are incredible. They're generating a localized field that's actually stabilizing space-time in this area. Without it, I think reality itself would collapse." The docking procedure was unlike anything Rex had experienced. The bay seemed to reach out and pull their ship inside, and once they were secured, he felt an immediate sense of relief. The constant whispers and psychological pressure that had been building for days suddenly eased. Dr. Beth met them at the airlock, and Rex was surprised by how normal she appeared. She was a middle-aged woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. Wearing a standard research uniform? The only unusual thing about her was a small device attached to her temple that pulsed with a soft blue light. "Welcome to Research Station Omega," she said with a weary smile. "I'm sorry about the rough journey." "I'm sure you have a lot of questions." "We do," Rex replied. "Dr. Beth, what exactly is this place? And what's happening to our crew?" "This is one of humanity's deep space monitoring stations," she explained as she led them through corridors lined with the same geometric patterns they had seen on the exterior. "We study and maintain the barriers that keep our reality separate from places. As for your crew, they're experiencing the effects of psychic intrusion from entities that exist in parallel dimensions." Dr. Vale pulled out her scanner and began taking readings. "Dr. Beth, these energy patterns are unlike anything in our database. How did humans develop this technology?" "We didn't develop it," Beth replied matter-of-factly. "We adapted it. For thousands of years, humanity has been under constant assault from beings that exist in the spaces between realities. These entities feed on conscious thought and have been trying to invade our dimension through human minds. They entered what appeared to be a command center, filled with displays showing incomprehensible data streams and monitors that seemed to show views of impossible landscapes. Several humans worked at various stations, all wearing the same pulsing devices on their temples. "Those devices," Rex said, pointing to Beth's headband, "what are they?" "Psychic amplifiers," Beth explained. "Every human brain naturally generates what we call white noise, a constant stream of chaotic thoughts that disrupts extradimensional intrusions. These devices amplify that effect and allow us to consciously direct our mental defenses." Tom, who had been unusually quiet since boarding the station, suddenly spoke up. "The voices have stopped. For the first time in days, I can't hear them whispering." "That's because you're inside our primary containment field," Beth said. "Your species doesn't have the same natural defenses that humans do. When you enter our space, you become vulnerable to the entities that are constantly trying to break through. Dr. Vale was studying the displays with growing amazement. These readings suggest that human space exists in a state of constant dimensional flux. How do you maintain stable technology in this environment? We don't use stable technology, Beth replied. Everything we build is designed to function in altered reality. Our ships, our weapons, our cities, they all adapt to local changes. In space-time, we've had to completely reimagine physics to survive. Rex felt a growing sense of horror as he began to understand the implications. Dr. Beth, are you saying that humanity has been fighting this war alone for centuries? Millennia, she corrected. The barriers between dimensions have always been thin around Earth. We evolved on a world where reality itself was under constant attack. Every human child is born knowing how to fight mental invasions, even if they don't consciously understand what they're doing. Nora, who had been monitoring the station's communications, suddenly looked up with alarm. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy spikes throughout the surrounding space. Something is happening. The lights in the command center began flashing. Red, and alarms started sounding throughout the station. Beth moved quickly to a central console and began inputting commands with practiced efficiency. What's wrong? Rex asked. Your ship created microfractures in the containment field when you entered our space, Beth explained without looking up from her controls. The entities have been testing those weak points, and now they're mounting a coordinated assault. Through the viewports, Rex could see space itself beginning to tear apart. Dark shapes emerged from the rifts, things that hurt to look at directly and seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. The human crew worked frantically at their stations, their headband devices glowing brighter as they focused their mental defenses. Can we help? Rex asked. Your crew needs to stay in the shielded areas, Beth replied. If you're exposed to a full-scale intrusion, the psychic feedback could kill you. But there is something you can do. You can witness what we're fighting and tell the galaxy the truth. Rex watched in fascination and horror as the humans began their defense. They weren't using conventional weapons. Instead, they were projecting their thoughts outward, creating fields of organized chaos that the entities couldn't penetrate. The geometric patterns on the station walls began glowing and shifting, revealing themselves to be part of a massive psychic focusing array. This is incredible, Dr. Vale whispered. They're using their own minds as weapons. Not weapons, Beth corrected. Shields. We're not trying to destroy these entities. We're trying to keep them contained in their own dimension. They're not evil, just hungry. They feed on organized thought, and a galaxy full of telepathic species would be an all-you-can-eat buffet for them. Tom suddenly grabbed Rex's arm. Captain, they're not just attacking the station. They're following us? I can sense them trying to use our minds as a pathway back to galactic space. Beth's expression grew grim. That's what we were afraid of. Every alien ship that enters human space creates a potential bridge for these entities to escape. That's why we had to isolate ourselves from the rest of the galaxy. But why didn't you tell us? Rex asked. The Galactic Council could have helped. How? Beth replied. Your species are all telepathic to some degree. You can't even be in the same space as these entities without being driven insane. The only way to protect the galaxy is to keep it away from our war. The battle raged for hours, with the humans holding their defensive positions while reality itself seemed to tear apart around them. Rex watched in amazement as human technicians calmly worked to repair dimensional rifts while their colleagues used pure willpower to hold back entities that existed beyond normal physics. Dr. Beth, Rex said during a brief lull in the fighting, what happens if you lose? What happens if these entities break through your defenses? Beth looked at him with tired eyes. Then every thinking being in the galaxy becomes a potential host for creatures that exist in the spaces between thoughts. Telepathic species would be the first to fall, but eventually they would find ways to invade any conscious mind. Rex felt a chill run down his spine. You're fighting to protect the entire galaxy. We're fighting to protect reality itself, Beth corrected. These entities don't just want to invade our dimension, they want to reshape it according to their own nature. If they succeed, the universe as we know it would cease to exist. As the battle finally began to subside, Rex realized that everything he thought he knew about humanity was wrong. They weren't a primitive species that had stumbled onto dangerous technology. They were the galaxy's unsung guardians, standing eternal watch against horrors that most civilizations couldn't even imagine. "Dr. Beth," he said quietly, "what do you need from us?" "Go back to your council," she replied. "Tell them what you've seen. Make them understand that human space must remain off-limits, not because we're dangerous, but because we're the only thing standing between the galaxy and something infinitely worse." Rex nodded, understanding at last why no alien ship had ever successfully entered human territory. It wasn't because the humans were hostile, it was because they were protecting everyone else from a war that had been raging since before galactic civilization began. The attack began without warning. One moment Rex was discussing evacuation procedures with Dr. Beth, and the next, the entire station shook as reality itself seemed to scream in protest. The geometric patterns on the walls flared with blinding light, and every alarm in the facility began blaring simultaneously. "Full breach in sectors 7 through 12, shouted a human technician from his station. "The entities are using the alien ship's psychic signature as an anchor point. They're pouring through faster than we can seal the rifts." Rex felt a wave of guilt wash over him. His mission to investigate human space had inadvertently created the very crisis he was trying to prevent. Through the viewports he could see space itself tearing apart as dark shapes emerged from wounds in reality. "Get your crew to the emergency shelter," Dr. Beth ordered as she ran toward the command center. "This is going to be the biggest incursion we've faced in decades." But Tom was already collapsing, his hands pressed against his temples as he screamed in agony. "They're inside my head? I can feel them trying to use my thoughts as a doorway." Dr. Vale quickly pulled out her medical scanner. "Captain, his brain activity is off the charts. The entities are using him as a conduit to access our ship's navigation systems. If they succeed, they'll have a direct path back to galactic space." Rex watched in horror as the human defenders rushed to their positions. Unlike the controlled battle he had witnessed earlier, this was chaos. The entities were no longer testing the barriers, they were launching an all-out assault on reality itself. "Dr. Beth," Rex called out, "what can we do to help?" "Your crew needs to get back to your ship and prepare for emergency departure," she replied without looking up from her controls. "We're going to have to activate the failsafe protocol." "What's the failsafe protocol?" Rex asked, though he had a terrible feeling he already knew the answer. "We're going to permanently seal this section of space," Dr. Beth said grimly. "It will cut off human territory from the rest of the galaxy forever, but it's the only way to prevent these entities from spreading." Rex felt his blood run cold. "You're talking about isolating your entire civilization." "It's what we've always known we might have to do," Beth replied as she worked frantically at her console. "Every human installation is equipped with dimensional collapse charges. If we detonate them simultaneously, we can create a permanent barrier that nothing can cross in either direction." The battle around them intensified as more entities poured through the dimensional rifts. These weren't the shadowy shapes Rex had glimpsed before. These were beings of pure nightmare, creatures that existed in geometries that hurt to perceive. They moved through space like living thoughts, reaching out with appendages made of crystallized hatred and hunger. "Captain," Nora reported from her position near the communications array, "I'm detecting similar breaches throughout human space. Every major installation is under attack simultaneously." Tom suddenly stood up, his eyes now completely white. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. "Too late, we are through. The barriers weaken. Soon all minds will be ours to feast upon." Dr. Vale aimed her scanner at Tom and immediately recoiled from the readings. "Captain, that's not Tom anymore. Something else is using his body as a communication device." The thing wearing Tom's face turned toward Rex with a smile that was completely inhuman. "Your species will be the first to fall, little explorer. Your telepathic minds are so deliciously open to our influence." Through you we will spread to every corner of your galaxy. Dr. Beth grabbed a strange-looking weapon from a nearby rack and pointed it at the possessed Tom. This is exactly what we were trying to prevent. Captain Rex, your mission has doomed the galaxy unless we act now. Wait, Rex said desperately. There has to be another way. You can't sacrifice your entire civilization for the rest of us. Can't. We, Beth replied. Watch and learn what humanity is really capable of. She activated her weapon, which didn't fire a projectile but instead projected a beam of pure human consciousness. The effect on the possessed Tom was immediate and dramatic. The entity inside him began screaming in frequencies that made reality itself vibrate. But instead of fleeing, it fought back, using Tom's vocal cords to speak words in a language that predated the universe. You cannot hold us forever, mind warriors. We are patient. We are eternal. We will find another way through. Not through us, Beth replied with grim determination. She turned to her crew. Initiate failsafe protocol on my command. All stations prepare for dimensional collapse. Rex watched as the human defenders prepared to sacrifice everything to protect a galaxy that didn't even know they existed. The irony was overwhelming. The same species that galactic civilization feared and avoided were about to give up their freedom to save everyone else. Dr. Beth, please reconsider, Rex pleaded. The Galactic Council needs to know about this threat. We can work together to find a solution. Your council is made up of telepathic species, Beth replied. They would be corrupted within hours of exposure to these entities. The only reason you're still sane is because you're inside our shielding. The moment you leave human space, you'll become carriers for interdimensional parasites. The station shook again as another wave of entities broke through the weakening barriers. Through the viewports, Rex could see human ships engaging the invaders with weapons that bent space-time itself. But for every entity they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Failsafe charges armed and ready, reported a human technician. All installations throughout human space are reporting ready status. Dr. Beth looked at Rex with sad eyes. Captain, you need to get your crew to your ship now. You have approximately 10 minutes to reach minimum safe distance before we collapse this entire region of space. Rex felt torn between his duty to his crew and his growing respect for the humans who were about to sacrifice everything. What about you? What about your people? We'll survive, Beth said. We've been preparing for this possibility for centuries. Our cities, our ships, everything we've built is designed to function in isolated space. We'll be cut off from the galaxy, but we'll continue to exist. As Rex and his team rushed back to the starfall, Tom suddenly regained control of his body. The entity possessing him seemed to be losing its grip as the human psychic defenses intensified. Captain, he gasped, I could hear everything. They're not just trying to invade our dimension, they're trying to escape from something even worse. What do you mean? Rex asked as they reached the ship. There's something in their dimension that hunts them, Tom explained weakly. They're refugees, but they're also predators. They want to transform our reality into a place where they can hide from whatever is chasing them. The implications of this revelation hit Rex like a physical blow. The entities weren't just invaders, they were fleeing from something so terrible that they were willing to destroy entire civilizations to escape it. As the starfall launched from the station, Rex watched through the viewports as the human defenders made their final stand. Dr. Beth's voice came over the communication system one last time. Captain Rex, tell your council what you've witnessed here. Make them understand that humanity chose isolation not out of hostility, but out of love for a galaxy we've never truly been part of. We are the guardians at the gate, and we will continue to stand watch no matter what the cost. The dimensional collapse began as a point of absolute darkness that expanded outward faster than light itself. Rex watched in awe as the boundaries of human space folded in on themselves, creating a barrier that would be impenetrable for all eternity. The human ships and stations didn't disappear, they simply became unreachable, existing in a pocket dimension that was completely separate from the rest of the galaxy. As the starfall limped back toward galactic space, Rex composed his report. To the council, he would tell them about the brave humans who had given up everything to protect species they had never met from enemies they couldn't comprehend. He would explain why human territory must remain forever off limits, not because humans were dangerous, but because they were the galaxy's unknown guardians. The final entry in Rex's log read, "Today I learned that the most terrifying thing about humanity isn't their capacity for violence or their primitive technology. It's their willingness to sacrifice everything, including their place in galactic civilization, to protect others from horrors beyond imagination. They are alone now, cut off from the rest of the universe, standing eternal watch against the darkness. Between worlds, we owe them a debt that can never be repaid." In the years that followed, the region where human space had once existed became known as the Silent Zone. Ships would approach the boundary and find nothing but empty space, as if an entire civilization had simply vanished. But those who knew the truth understood that humanity hadn't disappeared. They had become something greater than any single species. They had become the eternal guardians of reality itself, forever watching the spaces between dimensions to ensure that the nightmares lurking there could never again threaten the galaxy they had sworn to protect.